Welcome. This is Recovery Monday, brought to you by the good folks at Powell CDC. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and it's the 6th day of October in the Lord's year 2014. We're perfectly happy to have you here. We are glad you stopped by today. Now, hold on. You may think, well, I don't have an alcohol problem. I don't have a drug problem. I don't have a food problem. I don't have an anger issue. I'm quite frankly rather perfect. And you may be, especially in God's eyes. But the odds are so high that you know someone in that situation or in the realm that we're going to talk about today, which is child psychology. We have an expert in our facility today. Her name is Dina, and she is a psychiatric nurse and a supervisor for Unity Point hospital systems here in Des Moines. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects today, and that's the 5 inches between the ears, the brain, and especially in a child, a developing child, an angry child, a fearful child, a child scared to death. And how can we as parents, grandparents, neighbors, folks that go to church with us, folks that we work with, how can we understand mental disorders better so that they don't scare us and they don't cause fear in our lives and want us to back away and not get involved? So Dina, is it Dina?
Dina, yes.
Did I say Dinah before?
No.
Dina. Okay, Dina, welcome.
Thank you.
Co-host, of course, Lila Stafford, here with us today from Powell CDC. Bob Montserrat, the cat in the hat, is not here. He has a good excuse. He is installing a hot water heater at the horse farm.
Oh, okay.
So, that's a good reason. Can you install a hot water heater?
No,
I just point
not.
where it is. I only know what they look like.
Hire other people.
All right, so Dina, you've been doing this for a few years. You're passionate about it.
I am.
Basically, you deal, and we talked about this a little bit before, you deal with adolescents, if they're still in school, 4 to 18.
Children and adolescents, yes.
Children. What's the difference between a child and an adolescent?
Our dividing line is about at 12 or 13, depending upon their physiological development.
Okay. And lots of different things to talk about here, but give me the most common scenario of you dealing one-on-one with a 12-year-old for any age.
All right. Well, in my role, I supervise 3 different units. So we have one inpatient unit that has a capacity of 16 beds and 2 outpatient areas. So in the inpatient area, which is a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week, we have nursing staff there. It's a locked unit. It's an inpatient unit. The children are not locked in their rooms, but the door to the unit is locked. And then
in and out.
Yes.
Okay.
And part of the reason, of course, is to keep the patients in there and to keep them safe. But a lot of these children have been abused, and this way nobody comes in unless we let them in and they feel safe. And safety is our mantra. Especially with the children. And then I have 2 outpatient units where the children and the teenagers come in during the day and then go home at night.
So is this kind of like their school?
They do go to school. We have a contract with Des Moines Public Schools. We have 2 special education teachers there. Any child that comes into our services does do schoolwork. They have a certain number of hours devoted to school every day.
And then they go home at night?
If they're in the outpatient programs, yes.
Okay. What if home isn't a safe place?
If that's the case, oftentimes they're maybe at one of the shelters in town.
Okay.
Or they're at a foster home.
Now, are you put in that horrible situation sometimes of determining that this child should not go to their home?
If we fear that a child is not safe, that the home environment may not be safe, what we do, we're mandatory reporters, and so we have to file what's called a CPI, Child Protective Investigation, and then it's turned over to the DHS, Department of Human Services, and they determine and maybe go to the home and interview and get, kind of eyeball the place and see what's going on. And once we file a report, it's up to the Department of Human Services to make that determination.
And how often? Is that 1 out of 100? Is that 1 out of 10?
I don't know an exact number.
Okay.
But
is it rare?
It's not rare.
Okay.
But if a child, because we file CPI reports if a child reports that they're being physically abused, sexually abused, we are mandatory reporters. We have to report what they tell us.
And this tough question. How often is it determined that the child is not being forthright? They figured out that they are mad at mom and dad, or grandma and grandpa or whoever, a caregiver. they can get back at them by saying, Grandpa touched me improperly, or I got hit the other day.
It has happened, but not as often as you would think.
Okay, good. All right. We're talking to Dina this afternoon. She is a psychiatric nurse supervisor as well as a psychiatric nurse. How long have you been doing this?
32 years.
How's it changed in 32 years? How have the children changed in 32 years?
Well, technology isn't our friend always with children. We were talking earlier, we get a lot of these children who've never had good, positive relationships with adults, have never had an adult sit down and play a board game with them, or bowling, or sat down and put a puzzle together. A lot of them don't play outside. What they do in their free time is play video games or stay in the house, and often the parents are disengaged. Sadly, a lot of the kids that we get, maybe they don't have their biological parents in the picture. They may be incarcerated. It's changed in that we don't have to seclude children as much as we've educated our staff. All of our staff goes through a program called Managing Aggressive Behavior at Unity Point, and all of our public safety officers. And it's the curriculum that we go by. It's out of the University of Oklahoma that we all have to be trained in. And it's not only just holds for maybe someone who's out of control in a physical way, but also how we speak to children or a person who's upset, how to de-escalate someone verbally by our body language, eye contact, just different techniques. And so what's nice is that our numbers for having to seclude and or restrain any of our behavioral health patients have gone down. They go down every year.
All right. Now, you call these behavioral health patients.
Yes.
All right. I want to write that down because I want to refer to them correctly. Behavioral health patients. Mm-hmm. So it would be wrong, it would be ignorant of me to simply say people who have mental disorders, because that doesn't cover everybody.
Well, it's semantics, really. I mean, some people still, I still refer to myself as a psychiatric nurse, even though the proper, the name of our department is behavioral health.
Okay.
So, people with mental illness.
All right. In your 32 years, and probably looking beyond that simply because you've probably been able to work with people who've been in this for a long, long time.
Yes.
Are there more cases of behavioral health issues with children than there was 25 years ago, 30 years ago? I mean, your career basically has spanned more than one generation.
Yes, it has. I'm not sure if the numbers are any different. I think people are more aware. There's more media attention to it. And, in our society, we hear about things pretty much as they happen. Almost everybody has someone in their life, child and adult, that they care about that has suffered with some type of abuse or depression or some other type of a psychiatric disorder. And I just think that there's more knowledge out there. And
have you seen the society have a change in heart about how they feel about people that are in mental health?
Somewhat, but there is still a stigma attached to behavioral health services, or that someone who's going to a counselor for help. And it's also a cultural thing. In some cultures, you just don't let, if you have a troubled child in your family, you don't have strangers take care of your child.
Right.
And that's for a lot of them. A lot of folks from other cultures, if they're bringing their child to us for help, they are really desperate because it's
how about insurance companies? Have they viewed it any differently? I just feel like they're so stingy with their money to have people get help like that. I don't know.
It's harder to get coverage. I mean, behavioral disorders, it's a lot harder. And for substance abuse, it's a lot harder to get good. We want some equity, some parity with our reimbursement. And it's harder to get payment for psychiatric mental health disorders from the insurance companies. And I spoke earlier, we have wonderful, fabulous care managers at Unity Point that help. They literally direct the care of every person, child that walks through those doors, and stay in touch with these insurance companies and let them know. And the care managers rely on the accurate documentation and the charting by the staff and by the physician, social workers, anyone else, in order to report to the insurance company. And they might say, okay, that patient can stay here for 4 more days. Well, we'll review again on Thursday. Yeah. And they just kind of piecemeal it out, which is frustrating because there's no pattern for how long it's going to take anyone to get well.
How is that different than 30 years ago?
30 years ago, when I first got out of college and I worked with children at Lutheran, kids came into the hospital and a lot of times stayed for months, and insurance companies paid for it. And
Did you see a difference in outcome?
It's hard to know because once they turn 18, they're out of our service line.
Yeah.
And we don't always keep in touch with them how they do,
After
in
that.
adulthood. When I did work with adults, oftentimes a patient would come in and they'd say, "Oh, you took care of me when I was 15 years old," And so I've gotten in touch with some, and I see some people that I've taken care of over the years out in the public. If they say hello to me, I will say hello. There's, again, that stigma attached. There are some that just, will yell at me and they don't care. This is the nurse that took care of me, when I was in the hospital. There are some, if they don't say anything to me, I just keep on walking because they have that right to privacy, and I'm bound. People that work in behavioral health were the first people to know, privacy. You don't tell anything who you're taking care of, anything that you see at work. You just can't talk about it.
It makes it weird because if you see someone in public and you pretend, I wait for them to say something to me first. And if they don't, and I don't say something, then they'll say later on, they'll say, you didn't even say hello to me. It's like, well, I'm not supposed to.
I'll never forget there's a young lady who, well, of course, everybody's young to me, but there was a woman who was in a program, one of the 12-step programs, and very active in a regular meeting that I was in for a couple of years. And she ran into my wife and I at a grocery store and did not want to talk to me because she was afraid her anonymousness would be gone because she had shown my wife or said something to my wife.
Aww.
So a lot of people are very particular about that, the second A in that 12-step program, the anonymous part. My guest is Dina. She is a, oops, I turned the page. She's a psychiatric nurse supervisor. A couple of weeks ago, I had the wonderful pleasure of interviewing a mom and a dad who have a 17-year-old son who has cognitive development delays. And I said, now, would you call that special needs? And this mother looked at me with the greatest smile in her life, and she said, Mac, we all have special needs.
True.
I'll never forget that because it's true. Every single person has special needs. Some allow themselves to be helped. Some live in the river called denial, which is not just in Egypt. And some, unfortunately, are so broken that it's obvious to all around that they have special needs. Would you agree with that? That
Yeah. I mean, yes, I think we all, that's why, as I spoke earlier, I enjoy working in behavioral health because it does keep you humble. No one's perfect. We all have our struggles of varying kinds. Some are easier to see than others. And it keeps you humble when you're taking care of people who are really struggling. And the children that we take care of at Unity Point, I have a lot of love for them. I have a lot of admiration. A lot of them have not great histories, and they're just trying to get better.
Yeah.
They're still in there fighting to try to have like a normal childhood.
Now, when you go home at the end of the day and you've had a tough day, have you figured out how to kind of put that in a box and take that back out at 8:01 in the morning, or does that just kind of, they say police people, God love them for everything they do, but it's kind of tough on the family because if they've been chasing folks all day long or getting shot at or whatever, they come home, they're pretty messed up.
I ride my bike a lot, and that helps me kind of keep my perspective because I hope that I never lose the passion that I have or the compassion that I have for the people that I take care of. And if I ever think that something happens horrible and it's not affecting me, then there's something wrong with me. So I try to check in with myself every day, keep myself humble, put it in perspective. And part of our curriculum on how we deal with the children and the adults that we take care of is to treat them where they are at.
Yeah.
Meet them where they are and blend with them, verbally blend with them, physically blend with them, and just be compassionate, be kind more often than necessary.
And after 32 years, and I don't sense a burnout in you.
Not yet.
You obviously have a passion. And like you said a minute ago, you figured out how to vent some of this stuff. I would imagine riding a bike can get rid of a lot of, that tension and that angst. Frustration maybe, too, that you can't do more.
I've never felt, I've worked in a lot of different places and with children and with adults. And as long as I check in with myself and be honest with myself about how am I doing, and I encourage my staff to take care of themselves, because you're not going to be any good at work if you aren't taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Eat right, exercise, those types of things.
Dina is my guest. She is a psychiatric nurse supervisor with Unity Point. When we come back, we're going to talk about kids that are referred from schools and behavioral problems in schools. That's next on Recovery Monday.
A father who is headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com. Visit emetroford.com today.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. Welcome back on this 6th day of October in the Lord's year 2014. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is Recovery Monday, brought to you by the folks down at Powell CDC. Now, today we're talking about mental health, but what we talk about are life's hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And I've always told you, and I'll continue to tell you, you now know somebody that you can call if something in your life goes boom. If your son or your daughter or your mother or your father or your pastor or someone from church or your best friend or someone at work you believe may need the help of a great facility like Powell CDC, you now know somebody. You know me. You know Lila. You now know who Dina is. What's the number again?
Well, for Powell, it's 515-263-2424.
Okay, and that number's up on the screen for those of you that are on the web. For those of you on the radio, just Google it, Powell CDC. It's 263-2424. Please, you're not expected to know the answers. But if you're close to this person in a relationship, you know the symptoms. You can tell when they're a bubble-off plum, when things just aren't right. Please call us. We don't show up in little white coats in a roaring hospital bed. We just want to listen. We want to hear, and maybe we can help. That's why we're here from Unity Point and Powell CDC. I'm J. Michael McCoy. My special guest today is Dina. I said her name incorrectly last time. It is Dina. And you were named after a famous actress.
I was. Dina Merrill.
Dina Merrill. The only Merrill I knew wasn't there one of the models on The Price is Right?
Carol Merrill was on.
Carol Merrill.
oh shoot, what was that? I can't think of
It was
what's the
a
name of
price.
the show where they did. It wasn't
Oh.
The Price is Right. It was Monty Hall. What was
Oh
that?
yes.
What's it called?
Let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal. That's
There
right.
you go. Okay.
Carol Merrill.
All right.
Who would know that people on that show?
Pretty random.
Well,
Jeez.
I'm a TV guy. You know, our family. I remember when my dad brought home a little color TV to put in the kitchen, and I wasn't supposed to tell the kids at school because it was very special that we had one, and most kids wouldn't. So we'd sit there at night and we'd watch Laugh-In, and we'd watch these shows because they were that's what used to be on from 6:30 to 7 were these game shows, not these Hollywood information shows anymore. So anyway, all right, Dina's my guest. You deal with kids 4 to 18, as long as they're in school.
Yes.
And I wrote down from some of our conversation before that a lot of your referrals, some of your referrals come from school.
They do.
Tell me how that would work.
If a child is at school, oftentimes the reason they act out at school is because they're being told to do something or they don't know how to do something and they have poor frustration tolerance or just kind of a lack of regard for authority figures in general. And school is a situation where, most kids don't like school to begin with, but the children that we get have like this, maybe an explosive reaction to being told to sit down or to get your work done and maybe attempt to strike the teacher, physical aggression, and or tear up the classroom. Just start throwing chairs, and then the other kids have to be exited out of the room. And sometimes the police will bring a child to our emergency department for an assessment to see if they need to be admitted.
Because the police were called to the school.
Yes.
Now, I keep asking you about what it was like 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Have those instances become more regular? Because you hear nowadays that the kids of 2014 are not like the kids when I was a kid of 1964. I mean, I can't imagine standing up and throwing a chair in a classroom. I don't know if I ever saw that, but I bet that's seen more than we know.
It would seem like it, but since I do this every day for a living and those are the kids that I see, I mean, I believe the kids are good still. And even a lot of the kids that come through our doors are really good kids. Maybe they're depressed. Maybe they're suicidal. Maybe they're just really struggling in school. Kids of today are smart as they can be, but they have a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah.
And for some of them, it's more than they can take. It's school and college. And, I never thought that you could have anything higher than a 4.0 for your GPA, but we get some really high achievers and they just kind of like implode. They just can't handle it. They're overwhelmed. Too many activities, too much pressure for school. We get those kids too that are just, they internalize everything.
Do you, I don't want to use the word blame, okay? But do you point at the lack of interaction now, human to human, because of video games and texts and social media?
There are published studies where kids need human face contact more than they need screen time. That means phones, computers, televisions. So we try to limit that with our children. There's been a lot of, it's all been, researched and studies that prove that children need to have interaction. There's a physician who is out of the University of Wisconsin, and I'm going to just butcher his name because I believe but he was here at a talk just a week ago about the importance of the first 1,000 days of a child's life.
Wow.
And
This is so weird because I just had this conversation before I came here. Someone asked me how my granddaughter was. She's 2 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't let her down. When I babysat for a Friday night, and I held her the entire time. And I just kept thinking the whole time, there's some kids that never get this.
There are.
And
it can cause it can cause permanent damage to, they're now thinking that it can cause changes in the actual brain chemistry and the structure of the brain if a child does not get that. If you or I saw a baby on this table crying, what are you going to do?
Pick
we'll go
it
over,
up.
talk to it, pick it up. A lot of kids, they learn how to trust and form relationships by those types of things. When I cry, somebody comes and gets me, somebody feeds me.
Yeah.
And that first year is really, really important. And a lot of these children that have been in orphanages all over the world have a lot of problems interacting. They don't have the ability to have a reciprocal, loving relationship. That's very difficult for them.
Yeah.
They're very primitive, and it's kind of like, I'm going to get you before you get me. They're in survival mode. And so this physician out of Wisconsin, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to butcher his name. He's fantastic. He calls himself Dr. Librarian. He's very funny, but he's very knowledgeable about how important it is to have FaceTime and decrease screen time for kids. So it's not a blaming of media. It's just how very important the little things that you just do, that we do, some of these kids don't get. So they don't really know how to form a reciprocal relationship with anyone, or to trust somebody that someone will feed them or that someone will protect them. It's, go out there and I'm out there by myself. And that's can turn into a condition that's called reactive attachment disorder. And it's very difficult, but very prevalent in a lot of the kids that we see because they've been in different homes or they were neglected or they were, their parents.
I've had to teach in our division in Powell, just teach families how to sit down and have dinner with each other because it usually ends up to be a fight, something, and just what to talk about. Or I've even had people have little notebooks and everyone's got their name on the outside. And you pass your notebook around everyone, and everyone has to put something that they enjoyed about you for that day. So it keeps things on a positive note for that day. And it's amazing how something that simple can change people, but they never thought of something like that.
But children, even from birth, humans, we need FaceTime. We need to be able to read cues in someone's facial expressions, know that we can trust somebody to love us, to protect us. And those first 1,000 days of a child's life are just so important.
Our special guest is Dina. She's a psychiatric nurse supervisor and a psychiatric nurse. She's been in the field for 32 years, and she works for the Unity Point Health System. I shared with you earlier my mental disorder, which is borderline personality disorder. I've shared this with the audience over and over and over, and so many times I'm so blessed because they'll come back to me and they'll say, thank you. I didn't know what was wrong, or I didn't know that. But see, I was at an orphanage for 8 months.
Really?
And so you go back to what you were just talking about, and I absolutely know what you're talking about.
I saw the look on your face. You were kind of going, oh.
Yeah.
That might explain some things.
I really needed the physicalness in a relationship. And when a little boy, and I'm talking even a 15 or 16 or 17-year-old, hasn't matured yet, many times that comes out in improper touching and embracing. And therefore, then you get pushed back on. And so the signals are all messed up. And I can really relate to that. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for doing what you do. Because there are people like myself out there that once we figure this out, once finally someone sits down and unpacks it and unpacks it and unpacks it and unpacks it, now I have a complete understanding of why I did what I did and I don't do it anymore. But before, I was a crazy man and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I was perfectly normal. Wasn't everybody scared that the person was going to walk out on them or abandon them or betray them? That was just normal.
I have a question for you. When you were talking about reading facial cues, I know there's certain mental health incidents where people, even if they had the loving, they can't read facial cues. Or is it all because of what happened when they were young?
I'm not sure how to answer that question, really. It's, oftentimes, if they're in a quote-unquote loving home and they've spent time, you can still have problems with relationships, depending upon how much chaos is in the home or how relationships were defined in that family. Maybe you had a very distant father or, an explosive mother, or those things can, and every kid is born with a different personality or way of interpreting that.
Yeah.
I come from a family of 11 children. I'm one of 11, and we have the same two parents.
Wow.
But we all have different kind of experiences or what we remember or how we responded to certain incidents in our lives. And so it's really interesting to talk to, like, say, one of my younger siblings, who I think had it way better than those of us who are older.
Oh, yeah.
Because mom and dad were getting tired and they had more money and there was more food to eat because the rest of us were moving out. And it's humorous to me to talk with some of my siblings and I'll say, do you remember when blah, blah, blah? Well, their perception of it is way different from mine.
Yeah.
And it just I just find it it's interesting to me to find out where anybody, including my siblings, how they've experienced things, what their perception is of a situation, because that's their reality.
Yeah.
And whether we agree with it or not, or whether we understand it. So the children that we see at Unity Point, that's whatever their perception, that's their reality.
Yes.
And you have to respect that. They may be, acting out physically or trying to harm themselves, but you want to find out, instead of saying, what's wrong with you, saying, what happened? What happened to you?
Yeah, where did the brokenness come from?
Yeah, what happened? I mean, that's a more compassionate way to just really, we tell them it's normal to be mad, but it's not normal to start, punching people when you're mad.
We talked earlier about the referral from the schools. That's something that's really changed in 30 years, what the school is able to do and what they're not able to do. Before, I remember my second grade teacher tied me to a chair because I wouldn't sit down and be quiet. And if that happened today, that teacher would be fired immediately. How has that helped or burdened what you do for a living to help these kids?
Well, I will just say that I have a lot of love for teachers because they have to deal with a lot.
Yeah.
They really do. And I think that has become more of an issue for teachers. And we're always happy to help them out. We have school teachers on campus at Iowa Lutheran. And sometimes kids that have had problems in school before, when they're in the classroom, will act out again. And those, we go in there and help kind of secure the situation or, get the child so that he or she is safe. My recollection from 30 years ago, I don't recall getting as many school referrals like in the early 80s as we do now.
Okay.
That's where when they blew, we call it blow out of school, they blew out of school by running away, by throwing furniture, punching a teacher.
I used to teach school, and I'll tell you, you have everything in your classroom, every kind of discipline problem and language problem. You've got everything in the world in there, and you have to teach everybody in the classroom. So you're, trying to divide the class up according to how they learn and how they can learn. And I had a little girl that was ADD, but it was before anyone really talked about ADD, and she used to run on top of the tables, and all the teachers couldn't handle her. And for some reason, I just loved this kid, so I never talked about her running on top of the tables. Just let her do it. And found out later she had ADD. It was her parents used to tell me, "Thank you for letting her stay in your class."
This is Powell CDC's Recovery Monday, our last segment with Dina coming up.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Okay, we're coming back, 6th day of October in the Lord's year 2014. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is Recovery Monday, brought to you by the good folks at Powell CDC, 263-2424. You do have someone to call when your suspicions kind of keep you up at night. You wonder about your grandchild or your daughter or your neighbor's kid or maybe your husband, maybe yourself. Self-analyzing, thinking, this isn't normal behavior. Maybe nobody's bringing it up to you, but you don't think it's normal. Call somebody. Call somebody that cares. They're not going to judge you. They're going to meet you where you're at, just like Dina said earlier. They're going to meet you where you're at and find out where you're at and the help that you need. Because like we said earlier, everybody has special needs. Everybody, even you. We're talking with Dina. She's a psychiatric nurse supervisor with Unity Point. Suicide. It seems to me that we have a lot more teenage suicide than we ever did before. Is that just because we have social networking and media and things like that, and we are more aware of it, or is it higher suicide rate for teenagers?
I don't know the exact answer to that. My personal opinion is that it's just so much more in the media.
Okay.
And it's almost glorified. And now the proper way, we've had suicides at a couple of high schools here in the central Iowa area. And I've gone to several workshops, and pretty much what they do is if there's a suicide at the school, they offer counseling and things, but they really frown upon doing a big memorial for that child who has taken their own life, because then it looks kind of glorified, and then it sometimes has like a chain reaction effect.
Yeah.
Other kids, well, hey, they're going to have a memorial for me, and they're going to put my name on, this little statue here or whatever. So they really discourage the schools from doing anything school-sponsored type of event that memorializes or makes it look like it's this glorious thing. I just think that people know more about it, but there's always a lot of pressure on teenagers. It's hard to be a teenager. I didn't like it. I mean, you're part grown up, you're kind of part a kid. It's hard to just find out where am I at?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? They kind of want to be an adult, but on the other hand, it's scary and it's expensive, right? And so, I just have a lot of respect for kids that they're trying. They're really trying.
I have a 16-year-old grandson, and my daughter and her husband just do a magnificent job, far better than I could have, because I'm sure he's a lot like I was. I mean, the hormones are crazy, and the temper is out of control sometimes, and yet they're so sweet, because they still are children in many ways. Mm-hmm. And to a parent, you'll always be a child. And
I was going to add to, Lila didn't mention this, but I think that I should. Powell CDC is a wonderful place. And just this spring, they started an outpatient substance abuse program for teenagers that is 3 evenings a week at Iowa Lutheran Hospital. And so you can use that same phone number, the 263-2424, to access if you have a child in your life that you think is drinking too much, using drugs possibly, and they can have an assessment and maybe be enrolled. A lot of family involvement. It meets 3 evenings a week at Iowa Lutheran Hospital, and it's just a fantastic program. They're just getting it up and running. So that's a resource too.
And I want to tell you that since last week, I'm going to be at the, what do they call it? It's the alternative school in West Des Moines once a week.
Yeah.
Doing a small group for them and for Powell. So
wow.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Mm-hmm. Really fun. I love the principal there. She's a friend of mine, and be able to do that for young adults.
I'd like to go with you sometime, if that's possible. I mean, my credentials aren't, like yours, but I'm an interested party.
Yeah.
So, and I'm your radio co-host, so that ought to carry some weight, Coco. Our guest is Dina. She's a psychiatric nurse supervisor within Powell. Signs of suicide.
Signs.
Something you see in your child that should tell you, wow, they're...
it's hard to, there's no real pattern. There are some kids that don't say anything about it, and they go ahead and make the attempt. There are some kids that will talk openly about, or some kids that will take a huge overdose and then go to their parents or their caregiver and say, I just took a big overdose. We've had cases where nobody thought anything was wrong. And mom or dad came home early and found them unconscious, and they had, made a really serious suicide attempt. So, a depressing, mood can be more depressed. However, a lot of times when someone finally makes the decision to take their life or to attempt to take their life, they're euphoric. They think, I finally have come up with a solution. This will solve everything. And that's why a lot of times you hear, well, they didn't seem depressed to me. If someone has sadly is successful in taking their own life, talk with your kids, talk with your loved ones. You're not going to give someone the idea to take their life if you ask them, are you having thoughts of harming yourself?
Yeah.
You're not going to give them the idea.
Right.
So sometimes that kind of people are intimidated by that. Well, if I mention suicide, is that going to make them think of that?
When you've got a youth that has attempted suicide, a serious attempt, and because of circumstances beyond their control, they are still alive, what's their mindset?
It varies. Some people, I'll just say people in general, not just kids, when they wake up and realize they were unsuccessful, they're mad.
Okay.
And because you ask them questions after they've attempted suicide, like, did they leave a note? Did they have a plan? Was this planned out? Did they leave a note? And now, when they are alive, how do you feel about being alive? Did you think that this would really kill you? As in, your heart is going to stop beating. You're dead. And that's how you can kind of get an assessment for like the level of lethality. Any person who attempts suicide once is at risk to attempt again. And so that's what we always teach families. If a child has made an attempt to get all the firearms out of the house, to lock up medications, depending.
Do you find that teenagers don't really, this sounds dumb, but don't really understand what that finality is?
Well, from a developmental standpoint, and the development of their brain, a lot of them, because for a teenager, everything is catastrophic. Yeah. Everything is, they don't really have that concept of this too shall pass.
Yeah.
It's the here and now. And if they just had a fight with their boyfriend or somebody said something mean to them on Facebook, they internalize it and think this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
And so you really have to keep that dialogue going with kids, and this will pass and you'll be okay. And we've told some kids to stay off social media. That's hard for them to do, but kids can be mean to one another.
Yeah.
That's another burden that wasn't there 30 years ago. Is
social media.
Yeah. What kids used to say to your face, maybe bullying and stuff, now maybe doubled, because you may hear it in school, but then you see it on social media.
Yeah, I've noticed, we were talking about suicide, Dina, and I've noticed that a lot of times when a student commits suicide, they'll put together these grand videos, because you can do that nowadays.
Right.
At home on your computer, probably even on your cell phone, where before those videos would have to be professionally produced, or they'd be a slideshow or whatever. And you're right, there's a glorification there that if I'm a bubble off plum and I'm not liking this world and I'm thinking this isn't for me anymore, I'm going, wow, look what I get. Look at the send-off I get.
And they don't, anyone who takes their life, a lot of times doesn't really fully comprehend the fallout and how it affects the people that are left behind.
Yeah.
Just the heartbreaking sadness and grief that any family members go through if someone takes their life.
Well, and I've always been amazed by the statistic, Dina, that if one person in a family commits suicide, it's highly likely that someone else in that same family will later on.
It tends to run in families. When you do a history, health history, psychiatric history, you ask if there's any family history of suicide. When I worked at another hospital, I was the psychiatric consultation liaison nurse, so I was consulted when a person was in the intensive care unit after a suicide attempt, and I would interview them. And I'd always ask them, or if I was consulted for any reason, I would ask them, do you have a family history of mental illness? No. Do you have a family history of substance abuse? Well, yeah, Well, probably back in the day, someone was drinking to maybe mask an illness.
Yeah.
And, I would find out a lot of times suicide does tend to run in families, just like if you have a heart attack, then that's in your family history. So you're more likely to have a heart attack, or you're at risk. Did your dad have a stroke? Then you also have that history. Same with, mental illness and suicide attempts. Tends to run in families.
Well, I sure appreciate you taking the time. First of all, thank you for doing what you do. And you are passionate about it.
I am.
And kids are lucky when they get in front of you, because you're not...
They're lucky when they get in front of my staff. I have some amazing people that work with me. I do. Nurses and counselors and techs, and they are incredible. I have a lot of people with a lot of great experience.
Well, what I've noticed about you is you seem to understand the boundaries, but you're not scared of them.
No.
And so many times, including myself, bureaucracy, I run from bureaucracy and maybe don't get involved in things I want to get involved with because I don't want to get caught up in all that red tape. And it seems that you've got that figured out. So, Dina, I appreciate you being here. I hope you come back again. And thanks for being here today, Lila.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you next week, and we'll be back.
A father who is headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Get away from my Sumito credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
All right, we're back in Recovery Monday on this 6th day of October. I just have, and I told her on the air, and I'll tell her off the air, and I'll tell you on the air, I have so much respect for what she does. It doesn't seem to wear her down.
I was thinking that the whole time and having been in it for 30-some years, and she still has a smile on her face and has ambition.
Yeah, she's passionate about it.
Yeah.
And yet she has, we talked about this before the show started, she has no, connection to it in any way. There wasn't someone in her family or something. She just was in college and felt that that's what she needed to do.
Yeah.
And it was nice to hear her talk about her team.
Yes.
Because there are no successful leaders without a more successful team behind them. And too many times teams are never recognized. I know that I'll mention Ryan in every show that we do being produced by Ryan. I don't do that to make him, hot for girls or girls hot for him. I do it because he does a good job, and I couldn't do this without him. So now don't let that go to your head. No raises in 2014. Remember I told you. I'm surprised. I'll tell you what, I am surprised. And perhaps she just didn't know, wasn't prepared, didn't think it would be a question I asked. But when you get somebody that's done something for 32 years, I was really looking for some contrast. Now, I suppose when I think about it out loud, she's professional enough to say, I don't have those statistics. I don't know. And that's probably better. But you can't, when you were growing up, anybody in your school commit suicide?
No.
See, I don't remember anybody either.
No.
But yeah, I don't think you could talk to one graduating class of any given high school in the country and say, was anybody in your class committed suicide? And they'll remember somebody. Mm-hmm. I just don't think kids, is this a bad statement? I don't think kids committed suicide 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Well, I don't know, because I think what she was saying is that the media, if they did, the media didn't publicize it like they do now.
Yeah, maybe that's true.
So it was more of a shame thing, I think, back then, and so no one talked about it.
Well, COD was listed, cause of death was listed in every obituary legally in this country until like 1956 or 57. That was part of the obituary. Now, that was also back when obituaries were free.
Yeah.
You know, the two times you got your name in the newspaper for free was your birth announcement and your death announcement. Now, and some people may know this or may not, those obituaries are paid for. If you do refuse to pay for an obituary, those are the shortest ones.
Yeah.
No pictures, so-and-so born, died, so-and-so's handling the services. Nothing else about them. And I prefer the cause of death be listed, because who doesn't read an obituary and say, I wonder what they died of?
Oh, I think that all the time, and I've already told my husband, if I die for something, I want it in there that I'm been in recovery, that I'm in a 12-step program, you know, and I don't think I'll die from anything related to that, but I want that in there so people can learn from it.
Yeah, that's in my obituary too.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And I've said publicly, and I'll say it again, if for some reason I should ever decide to go out for more research and that kills me, I want that in the obituary.
Yeah.
That after XYZ number of days or years sober, he decided to go out and start drinking again, and that was the overall cause of his death.
Yeah.
So, well, I think Dina and people like Dina are amazing. I really do. And I
feel really lucky that Unity Point has her.
Yeah, we are.
Really, really.
Sounds
lucky.
like she's been doing this a long time across different parts of the world or the country.
Yeah.
And this was home, so this is where, she ended up. But passionate woman. I was one of the things we talked about that I really enjoyed was the referral from schools.
Yeah.
A lot more than there used to be, because teachers are not allowed to discipline anymore. And kids are, they're knowledgeable that teacher can't hit them or push them, or as they did with me in second grade, tie me to a chair. I don't know what we've done to our public education.
You were tied to a chair?
Yeah, when I was in second grade, Mrs. Meyer tied me to a chair. Well, I'm sure I deserved it. I was mouthy. I didn't respect my elders. I was probably running around. I was probably getting out of the chair. In fact, after she told me not to get out of the chair, I probably did it on purpose.
I had my mouth taped.
Yeah? Oh, I'm sure I had that several times. But yeah, I was tied to a chair.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what I needed. I mean, here it is, 48 years later, 47 years later, and I remember that. And you know what I have for that teacher? A great amount of respect.
Yeah. And
I ran into her. It was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and they had a little ditty in my town, and she showed up, and I thanked her for doing that.
But that's because of the family you grew up in. There would be families that would be after that today, be after that teacher, and you'd even forget why you were tied up.
Yeah.
I don't believe in tying kids up, though, but And I would never hit a kid in school, ever. Well, I wouldn't hit a kid, period. They're just
would you paddle them with a wooden
spoon?
spoon?
No, absolutely not.
Your kids were never paddled?
No.
Oh, okay.
Mm-mm.
Well, you got good kids, so it must have worked.
Well, they say that the look on my face will tell them everything. I mean, I could make them feel really bad.
Yeah. Well, my wife had a wooden spoon, and that's what our kids would get hit with.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it hurt. She didn't hit me with it because I was never that bad. But I do think it's a shame. And Frank called in earlier, and we just couldn't take his call because we were running out of time. But he's a great parent. And Frank and I have talked off radio before that we've really done our society a disservice by taking the ability to educate actions as well as educate the mind of a kid in school. Because if a kid does something in school that's wrong, the parent or the teacher ought to have 100% authority, not touching them, but 100% authority to say whatever needs to be done or punish them, whatever they need to do. And I don't think they have nowadays.
No, I don't know that I believe that. But I used to have parents come and sit in the classroom. If I had a kid that was misbehaving, I would have a parent have to take off work and come and sit in the classroom.
By your request?
Yeah.
Wow. That'd get them in hot water at home, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but they would behave. And I'm not, I mean, I never hit a child.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun on Recovery Monday to meet some of these people And Dina was just an incredible guest, and I thank you and the folks up at Powell and Unity Point Health Systems for allowing us to spend an hour with someone like her. And we're going to continue to have very special guests, not only people who tell their story, who have had hurts, habits, and hang-ups, but people who are in Al-Anon, people who are codependents, people who have really messed up their lives with an incorrect identity of themselves. And that's where it all goes for me. If our children aren't growing up with a proper identity of who they really are in the bigger picture, then it's so easy for society, commercial, social network, whatever, to tell those kids what their identity is in their mind. And that's usually not a good thing. So
that's what this therapist I know says is the spiritual deficit.
Yeah. Yeah, you ought to know why God created you and what he created you to do. Yeah. All right, kids, until we see each other again, think of somebody. Think of somebody you can't forgive. Think of somebody that weighs heavy on your mind and you have a resentment against them. Tonight, forgive them. Remember, the key is love. We'll see you next week. Bye.